Peptic ulcer disease is the disease of, not exactly disease, a condition, a clinical condition where there is an ulceration, meaning a wound in the stomach. Peptic, coined from the name peptic acid. Peptic acid is found in the gastric. So sometimes you hear gastric ulcer, you hear peptic ulcer. They're not physically different. They are just relating to the stomach. The only other different type of ulcer is duodenal ulcer, which is just the next organ after the stomach. All right. The stomach, which is the sac that contains food, also contains gastric acid or peptic acid that helps to break down protein. The word peptic there is directly related to protein. Okay. So it helps to break down protein. But over time, there could be hypersecretion of this acid that could now cause a breakdown in the walls of the stomach. Now, the stomach walls originally contains mucous membranes or mucosa that prevents this acid from eating up the stomach lining. For some reasons, again, this mucous membrane could also be reduced or absent and further allowing this acid to eat up the stomach. And when this happens, you come down with what you call the peptic ulcer disease. Peptic ulcer disease can be caused by a couple of things. One of them is stress. During stressful moments, there is a hypersecretion of acid, right? Just to break down the food in it. It's natural. In the whole body, when you're stressed, the body metabolic rate is increased and intensified, and you have many activities going on. Carbohydrates is broken down, more proteins are broken down, fatty acids are broken down to provide one major thing, which is glucose, to allow you to think, send glucose to vital organs. One of them is the brain, the other is the eye, the other is the heart. All these organs, want to function optimally. Now, the gastric juice is also enhanced to break down any food in your body. So that's why if you just ate and you get into very major activity, not long after you'll be looking for the food. Or if you're chewing gum, because those are signs of stress. Now, so stress is one of them. But then when you try stress in an empty stomach recurrently, you are giving room for this acid to act on the walls of your intestine. The second major cause of peptic ulcer disease is a bacteria called Helicobacter pylori. Helicobacter pylori is a very dangerous bacteria because, a bacteria that dwells in acid, I really don't know what you want to do to that bacteria, but basically it stays there and it eats up the lining of the intestine, all right? So this is one of the implicative factors for those who are positive for ulcers. One of the third causes is the use of drugs, certain drugs or certain chemical substances that are erosive, okay, caustic soda. One of that one is some of all these drugs you buy on the road, you just ingest them, you swallow them anyhow, especially pain relievers. That's why you don't just go out to take pain relievers just anyhow. They affect the stomach, and of course they potentiate, because what they do is they inhibit that mucous membrane I talked about that prevents the acid from getting on the stomach, and then they remove it. And you see, you have the acid, the direct contact, and then you have some ulceration, wounds in your stomach, and it can get so bad that by the time those wounds get then straight to a vessel, it ruptures the vessel, and then you have bleeding. So you have people bleeding sometimes, all right? And then one other cause is a genetic factor. So sometimes ulcers can be genetic, all right? It's called the Zollinger-Ellison syndrome, where the vagus nerve that supplies the intestine is hyperstimulated, and so you have excessive secretion of acid. And listen, this is specific for certain people, okay? Just the way some people sweat more than other people, just the way some people, eat more than the other people. Some people produce saliva more than other people. You can also produce gastric acid more than other people. Well, the word is try to eat recurrently. Don't fast every time. If you're fasting, let it be clear that you're fasting, okay? And you want to fast guidedly, okay? Maybe with your doctor. You like to see your doctor first and be sure that you're good to go, okay? If not, you don't do it recurrently, okay? What other things can you do to prevent it? Yeah, irrational use of drugs. Don't just take drugs because you see them. Don't drink chemicals easily. The use of alcohol potentiates it. Regular intake of alcohol exposes you to possibilities of coming down with peptic ulcer disease. Now, one other thing is ingestion of diet. What kind of food should you do? High levels of acid containing diet should be minimized. All right. Sometimes you see people taking all kinds of concussions, herbal concussions. You are exposing yourself to great dangers. Okay. When you do all kinds of acid containing meals or diet, lime, you're trying to mix lime and ginger, and you're trying to lose weight, but you are potentiating something else. So it's important that you are careful what you are mixing, prevent it. You don't have to take excessive protein diet. Some people like to take roasted meat, for an example, what we call suya locally. You do a lot of suya and you do a lot of alcohol. That can potentiate peptic ulcer disease for people. So prevent it by reducing this type of foods. Try not to take a lot of carbonated drinks. Alcohol dropped drastically. Water is very important. And before you do some of these things, please eat right. All right, eat your balanced diet. Don't skip meals. Then tell your doctor. Major symptoms, remarkable symptoms of peptic ulcer disease is that you have painful sensation here on your upper stomach. Many times that gets you to the test is which is usually the gold standard. There's urine breath test, one of the tests, but the gold standard is an endoscopy where you get to see the internal organ and be sure that there's a wound there. And this usually happens when there's bleeding, from the mouth or from the anus. All right. Other symptoms, like I said, is bleeding. You have bleeding. So you don't just have pain. Pain that spans from this upper stomach down to the back. So it feels like a dagger piercing through you, down to the back. It's characteristic of that. Okay. Especially worsened when you've not eaten or when you just ate. The moment you take in food, you feel that sharp pain that, wanes for a while. So food affects the pain. Okay. Of course, bleeding is one of the side effects, one of the symptoms of peptic ulcer disease, bleeding, either from the mouth, just see slight trace of blood, or from the anus. One more thing is the heartburn. You feel that constricting pain, heartburn. Then lastly, there are few other symptoms, but one of the remarkable symptoms is a headache. You have a persistent headache that can be called a migraine. Not necessarily a migraine, but many people just say, oh, it's a migraine, but it's not. You notice that headache coincides with when you have the stomach pain, or it precedes the stomach pain. Now, that is a kind of symptom of a peptic ulcer disease. Usually, it's said that some of the brain cells, have some mimicking cells that look like the ulcer cells. So whenever the ulcer is firing, or whenever the gastric acid is firing, you have the same firing occurring in the brain, and you have that headache. Whenever you have it, you need to treat properly for peptic ulcer disease.
Welcome to The Advocate on PlusTvAfrica, where your panelists discuss thought-provoking topics in an atmosphere of seriousness, decisiveness, and laughter. Here we call a spade, and like we say here, no holds barred. All the panelists today are in one voice on the inclusion of special needs children in all spheres of life. I am calling for inclusion in the service sectors. Sholape breaks down what autism means and the need for inclusion, noting that it starts from our homes. Ezia Fakaku speaks on the right to effective intervention. Doyinshola is calling for inclusion in the classrooms and workplaces, and Zuzi points out the signs to look out for in your child. So sit back, and after this break, we'll be here to dissect it all. Stay with us. Autism Awareness Month. Inclusion and the service sector. Normal children, as they develop, get to enjoy certain things like traveling, parties, playgrounds, going to the cinema, and to restaurants. Most of us don't think twice about this until we either have a child with special needs or are confronted by a situation involving a person with special needs. Let me remind you at this point that autism spectrum disorder, ASD, is a hidden disability, making it harder for people to identify that a person has this condition. The social aspect of community is extremely important when raising a family and for the general well-being of its members. Allow me to explain further with 2 examples. Firstly, some children have never had the chance to experience going to the movies because of their diagnosis, something many of us take for granted. The typical cinema environment can be stressful for children with sensory difficulties or learning impairments. On top of that, other moviegoers tend to be unsympathetic due to ignorance or lack of understanding. And as a result, the experience can leave the child with special needs and their family traumatized. My second example, I recently traveled out of the country without my children. At the airport, we were taken through the check-in and immigration process by a protocol officer. Even with that, the process was tedious and long. I imagined my usual no protocol travel situation and that of other special needs families in this COVID era. Just thinking about it made me anxious, as I could imagine the sensory overload and the inevitable meltdown, as well as the stares and ungracious comments of other travelers. Those are just 2 scenarios. Now, viewer, think of a social setting you go to with your family and imagine if one of your children has ASD or some other challenge that makes going out and social settings as they currently are difficult. Is the answer to just keep them at home, don't include them at all, even if you know they enjoy such activities? What if I told you there are tangible steps that the service industry can take to be inclusive? It is my opinion that the service sector must be part of the change and awareness building we talk about often on this show. So what can be done? Let's take the scenarios I just gave. Cinema going. Well, I have actually put in a proposal to a large cinema chain in regards to sensory sensitive screenings to include and introduce people with ASD and sensory issues to the cinema going experience. This would include temporary adaptation of the environment and training of staff members to understand and welcome people of different needs. Easy. As for travel, Nigeria can become part of a global program started in the UK called the Hidden Disabilities Sunflower Program. I use it with my daughter when traveling from the UK. Our family wears a sunflower lanyard which discreetly indicates to people around the wearer, including staff, colleagues, and health professionals, that they need additional support, help, or just a little more time. This means without having to explain ourselves to every person, staff can discreetly help and attend to us without disrupting other passengers and without traumatizing my child with additional needs or her neurotypical sibling. Airline staff, for example, are also given some awareness training to be able to assist passengers with hidden disabilities. Of course, you know me, I've also put in this proposal as well to the relevant bodies. I could give other scenarios like popular indoor and outdoor play centers, popular restaurant chains, and more. The key is that the service sector cannot be left out of the change and must be implored to do more to serve all members of the community in which they operate. So ladies, what do you think? There's a lot of sighing.
Fantastic.
Great that you went first.
Yes. Like, okay.
So now
We know
we're motivated, better motivated.
So what?
better prepared.
Yeah,
for me.
so what you know, a lot of the times when we enter these kind of conversation, there's always a kickback, there's always resistance. But I know that my child hasn't been diagnosed with autism, but the cinema going experience is hard. Why are people so slow to pick this up?
Awareness and knowledge. Simple.
I
We're
agree.
in an environment where we don't speak much. You may speak as a parent, I may speak as a parent and service provider, all of us here. But if our circle remains small, then it's not really, yes, start small, but if it remains small, then not a lot of people are going to partner to it. So I think it's all about speaking out some more. Those people that are in this situation, speaking out and not just thinking it's my problem, I can deal with it. I maintain that if somebody doesn't know how to help you, they're not going to be able to offer any assistance.
Shouldn't there be something that's literally, I don't want to say forces, but let's just say forces you as a business to cater to all members? So,
I think that in addition to what everyone has said, two critical things that affect the changes, what we want is, one, you find that in our environment we resist change very, very often. And it is usually as a result of the lack of creativity. Because what happens is almost everything we have around us is the total replication of another person's idea. So when you bring in that part, asking for me to change a part of it, that means that I'm going to get totally thrown out of, my comfort zone. And because I don't have what it takes because I didn't conceive it in the first place, and I didn't take the time to learn about what exactly the structure is about, I'm going to find it difficult to adapt or to adjust if anything moved out of place. So that, I find, is one of the things that affects the development that we need. That's why you find that when you put something forward, you don't usually get a response on time, except you go on and on and on about it, or you start to show them how to go about it, because usually we can't conceive it.
so it's a very form of like linear, linear thinking.
Whilst I agree with that, I would also say the person you copied, like the nation or wherever you copied, they've gone ahead and moved forward. So why can't we still go back and copy? Okay, the other day I went to a children's play center, a very large children's play center in Lekki Phase 1. As I walked in with my kids, I saw this little boy, a toddler, flapping his hands and screaming. I knew exactly what was going on. He was with a nanny. The person he was with was a nanny, and I said, okay. I went to meet her. Where is the child's mom? And she said, oh, she went out of... I said, you know what? See, I mean well. I'm not a dangerous person. Let's take this child outside. This place is a bit too much for
the
this
sensory
child.
overload.
And she was looking at me. I said, my kids are here. So let's take this child outside. Then the mom came in. I said, this your son. Take him into the car right now. Let him be in a quiet place and let him just get over this meltdown. This is what is going on with him. And she said, she didn't know. She just said, he does this. I don't know what to do again. I don't know what to give to him. And I didn't want it to seem like I was marketing anything. I just, I just gave her the awareness. I told her, okay, this is what you need to know. And this is where you ask the school, ask questions. And I went my way. Much later, I saw the boy playing, and I was really happy. Like, okay, I'm fulfilled.
But it just serves a purpose to say, it's not just the parents that have to do this. We put a lot of emphasis on government. We put a lot of emphasis on schools. But the service sector is completely left out of this conversation. And it's really important because they touch the families every day. So if we can get them involved, it helps in the general awareness and advocacy for autism and other special needs.
I agree with what you're saying. And that's why I started with saying there's nowhere I go to. As I'm going there, before I leave, I must make sure that you know about what this is. Because at the end of the day, what you've done is you've educated that space. Because you cannot say you want to take a directory and say, I'm going to knock on all of these doors and tell them about
it's impossible.
This. It's not, in fact, you come to one street, you see 2. Come next week, you see 4. And even the 2 that you saw before, they changed their people. They've changed management. So in your mind, But if you do it as you move, you educate as you move, you touch more. And I feel like the gospel of the message you're trying to pass would move faster that way.
I
But,
guess I guess another question we should be asking ourselves: what is the government's responsibility in all this? Are there not things that should be put in place? Like, okay, if you are to set up a school, for example, and you say you are an inclusive school, are there no rules that governs or guides your setting up the school operations? You know. So what are we going to? I don't like going into the government's part of the conversation.
We will leave that for another conversation. That's another complete episode. Shalakme is coming up right after this break.
Increase the reach of your events or business services. To advertise on Plus TV Africa, please call 0906 000 5719 or 0909 040 8408, or send an email to marketing@plustvafrica.com. Plus TV Africa. Big stories live here.
Autism and inclusion. What is autism? Autism is a lifelong spectrum condition which affects how people see, hear, feel, and experience the world. Each person with autism has their strengths and challenges. The month of April has been set aside as World Autism and Autism Awareness and Acceptance Month, with this year's theme centered around inclusion. To accept me is to include me. To include me goes beyond integration. It means giving me a seat at the table and having my voice heard. Why inclusion? Inclusion works to the benefit of all. An individual with autism gets to participate in programs in their community with their siblings, friends, and neighbors, receive preparation for adult life in the community, and learn from their peers who serve as role model to help them with social skills and communication, lack of which is a major descriptive characteristics of an individual with autism. So, if acceptance means inclusion, what benefits of inclusion translates to an improved quality of life for an individual living with autism? How then can we as a community imbibe this culture of inclusion? It starts from the home. Rather than segregating, you can pick moments or activities to be intentional about it and build from there. For example, mealtime. Decide as a family to share one meal together. If the individual with autism has dietary options, be intentional about including his meal option in the family mealtime menu. What this says to the individual with autism is, you are a part of this family. You deserve to be on this table, and your choices are accepted. At school, create an enabling environment as school owners and classroom teachers to accommodate the learning style of the individual with autism in your environment. Be intentional about interaction. Create learning content that is well understood by all. Create a supportive peer culture, both inside and outside the classroom. What this does is that it empowers learners to respect and trust each other, making empathy and caring fashionable and reinforcing positive and pro-social attitudes. As an employer, have policies that support inclusion in the workplace. Adapt your management and communication style to engage more effectively with different team members. As an employee, consider colleagues' needs and personal circumstances when planning activities. Consciously connect with people who are not the same as you. Practice active listening. That is, listen to hear and understand. Don't be quick to jump into conversations with statements or questions.
I don't know about it being fashionable, because when you say something as fashionable, it means it can go away, right? We want these things that we're being intentional about to stay. Fashion comes and goes, but the awareness, the intention is permanent and to be grown on and added to.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but what I'm trying to say is that when you're building awareness, you want to get people to buy in to what you're selling. And to get people to buy in, you have to make it something that is attractive. For example, you have a classroom structure whereby everybody knows that, okay, because you helped Timmy get that food, he really did enjoy it. You know, oh, I helped, you know, that pride. I was the one that helped Timmy with his lunch. I was the one that helped Tonya, for example, with his, I mean, on the playground, he was struggling. You know, that's someone that has a business now, for example, like you have a play area and everything. Anytime kids come, someone that wants to come and do copy and paste will have to copy and paste that inclusiveness to, you know. So that's it. You've turned it into a trend. You know, inclusion is. That's cool. What I mean by that.
Inclusion is cool.
It's cool.
Oh, absolutely, it's cool. Yes.
So by fashionable, you're saying it means it makes it something worth doing, something that everybody wants to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Something that you want to emulate, something that you want to, you know, is, you know, I want to be on this trend. Yeah, on this trend. And
so when the names are being called, I want to be a part of it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so because we would copy, perhaps, then we'll take everything and then we'll replicate it. And the bottom line is to keep on giving and keep on providing opportunities for everybody to be there.
Now, doesn't that work better with children? I feel like children would adapt it much more quickly. It's something that you see in schools. But I just envision, like, you know, adults who are being told to enter this space, you know, just being very resistant because they might think it might cost them more money. It's something that they think, why would their customers be interested? Why would people want to be interested? In fact, they wouldn't turn their customers away.
Well, it's because it has not affected them yet. I mean, if you're a business owner, you have a relative, you have a child or a relative on the spectrum, then in setting up your business, trust me, you would put that into consideration. I know some very good, there's this ice cream, really good ice cream business, and they have children on the spectrum, and I know how much they try to figure out and get organic, what's it called, the ingredients for the ice cream now. So you will definitely put it into consideration when it affects you. And that's the point I'm getting at. The point I'm getting at is when we put ourselves in other people's shoes, when you know as a business owner, you're putting in the whole, you're looking at the total picture, not just the people you want to serve, then you'll be more considerate.
But my question would be, why should you wait till it affects you before you step into that space? Whatever happened to just empathy, understanding, knowledge, arming yourself with, you know, the right tools and all of that. So if you use the example that Sholakwe gave in terms of family time, okay? So you have, let's say I have my child, a toddler or young child that's on the spectrum, and I take them over to the cousin's house. Because cousin A and B don't understand what's going on with this cousin, they just, or the parents are like, no, it's the bad wife that we married, the whatever, and then so you kind of get a bit of that. But what I think should be more logical, hopefully, if we're all logical beings, is that you would want to step back and figure out, why does this individual, why does this child always respond like this? Have that conversation with a parent who's even come out. Remember the question Tonya asked, that are you going to keep yourself locked away because you can't fit into this space? So if you've taken that bold step to go out, why don't you tell the next person, and that person be more open and accepting or listening to logic? I don't see why we should wait for the moon to turn green before.
It's like we're constantly waiting.
That's where empathy sets in. Like, there's this, before like she rightly said, before you even consider, there's this judgmental thing, the bad wife. Oh, why is this child behaving like this? People are not willing and they are not ready to take themselves out to figure out what exactly is going on here. Why is this child not responding?
Very interesting. Very interesting banter. Up next is Asia Fakaku. Stay with us.
So to tie all of this up, I'm going to talk to us about the right to effective intervention. Now, caring for individuals that have got special needs and people that have autism is very tricky and delicate. But there are some things that we need to put in place before we can actually do this. And I've narrowed them down into 6. So first, being properly trained professionals, the technicians that work with these individuals on a daily basis, having a program that's implemented and monitored by the right professionals, and policies, government policies, policies in the workplace, parental training. They have to have that training done as well. Patients' right to evidence-based service, and then the person-centered service. What do I mean by properly trained technicians? These are the people that work with these individuals, the children or persons with autism on a day-to-day basis, implementing programs that have been designed. So you have a diagnosis, you have assessments, and following that, programs are developed that will help close the gaps and transfer skills that these individuals are learning. So these technicians need to be properly trained in how to decipher those programs and then use them to train up these individuals in skill acquisition. And whilst they're doing that, they need to be supervised, and that's where program implementation and monitoring comes in. So they just don't take the program and run off on their own. People need to be supervised. So for instance, if you're working with me, I need to develop that program. I need to see that you're implementing it properly, because the skill transfer process is akin to dispensing medication. And we'll agree that if we dispense the wrong medication, that individual, in this sense, can either be damaged or just stagnated. So we want to monitor what's being done to be sure that the program is being implemented correctly, effectively, and efficiently. And that's done through data gathering, and then we review the data and we move on. The next step would be, okay, so we've trained all these people and we've designed the program. Do we have policies in place that would actually guide all of this? And that's where we believe not just the organizational policies come in, but we also have government policies. What are we doing as a people? What are we doing as a nation? What's out there? Are there guidelines? My colleagues have touched a little bit on that, but we're thinking of, are there bodies, are there organizations that have been empowered to have an oversight on what's going on, how these individuals, how the children are being handled? And then talk about the parents. It'll be good for parents to enlighten themselves. We can't overemphasize that. And I say to people, there are 24 hours in a day. If I, as a service provider, a teacher, or working on skill acquisition, I have your child for 8 hours, there's still 16 hours left that you're going to spend. So unless you give your child petidine, okay, they're going to be awake for at least 8 hours of a day. But without the petidine, they can, or you give them, they sleep for the 16 hours, or probably tap them to eat. So the more the parents are trained to recognize the child's need and not stay on the path of it's not my portion, the better they're able to see what's going on with their child and also implement the same program and the same plan when that service provider is in there. Now, for advocacy, the patient's, the child's right is paramount, and they must be treated, that's the word we use, or the intervention, the program must be evidence-based. What do I mean by that? You have to use skill acquisition strategies that have been proven to be successful. They've been tested, research has gone on, it's been documented. We'll take, for instance, the science of applied behavior analysis. There are a lot of people, charlatans, walking around and saying, oh, I'm an ABA practitioner, I'm a therapist, I'm a this, I'm a that. Nothing wrong with that. But again, for parents, you need to be asking the question, what are you doing? How are you implementing this plan? How is my child going to get better? Where is the evidence? Not sufficient to just go on Google or YouTube or wherever and pull up something. Yes, these are all nice. You get some information from it. But we need to know what you're doing. It's got to be research driven, not hearsay. Okay, and then ensure that the service you're providing is person-centered. Now, what do we mean by that? That individual that you're working with, you've got to take their opinion into account, especially as they get older. If it's a 2-year-old, 3-year-old, a minor, yes, the parent comes in because they are the ones giving consent. But when the child is deemed to have capacity, it's important that we have a discussion with that child, that individual, that learner, and ask questions. How do you want this to be done? Or this is what I'm about to do. What do you think of it? And so on and so forth. And it's not, again, for person-centered service, it's not about the mother, father, greater family. Yes, they're important as part of the clientele, but it is about that individual that is on the spectrum that has the need. We need to ensure that whatever we're doing, we carry them along, and everything is about that person. It's not about the parent's emotion, I'm sorry to say, but about the child's own emotion and needs.
Legend in the building.
Legend.
I think that any viewer watching that, what your piece just then, who just happens to be at the right place at the right time watching this, just received their blessing. You hit on so many important points, and I think sometimes the emphasis on the role the parent plays is not enough. We know you're the parent, you're looking after the child, but actually in the intervention of the child. Parenting is just not, clothing the child, making sure that they're eating. It's actually getting involved in the academics, in the education, and for children who are on the spectrum and have other needs, actually getting involved in the interventions. But why do you think so many parents are kind of head in the sand, are so resistant? Because Mr. Adebomehin, Zuzi, Ezia Fakaku, you must hit this wall every day of the week. What do you do when parents who, let's just say, are often the problem? How do you approach it? Because at the end of the day, it's the child that we're looking out for.
Okay. There are quite a number of ways that I'm aware of. One of them is to, sometimes you've had to go around the parent to work with the child, hoping that by the time the child begins to make the progress, the parent comes on board. And that has happened a number of times, really. And another way is to give them the exposure to listen to experts so that they are able to tie the pieces together. They don't need anybody then to come in and tell them, I think there's something happening here with Peter. Because if you've heard people talk about it, the people who know, you've heard different case studies, then you're able to fall in line, and we find that those ways actually do work.
Okay. I would add to that, and I would say that, yes, we meet those kind of parents. We meet those parents often, and I would use an example. There's this little lights at the center. We'll call them lights, by the way. And we're doing great. Then something happened, and we noticed a behavior contrast. Behavior contrasts is at different environment, different setting. The child knows what was right at this setting. Oh, this is the center. I will behave well. I will behave appropriately. But as soon as I leave the center, oh yes, no one is watching me here, and I can behave the way I want to. At that point, I hit a brick wall. Like, what's going on? I know something changed, and I called up my supervisor, who's a legend, and I said, I actually presented the case, like, what's going on here? And the beautiful thing about ABA is evidence-based, it's data-driven, it's observable, and we've been collecting data. We could pinpoint the exact time when this behavior contracts began. And then we invited the parents.
The evidence speaks for
Evidence speaks for itself, and at that point, the parents knew, oh, this is what happened. So can we not? Because we can't keep dancing around the parents. The truth is, they would spoil your work. The parents can spoil your work. You've been working so hard, and now the parents are doing certain things. When you have data, you have evidence, you have everything just right in front, then the parents know that, oh, this actually is my fault. It's not.
So I have one quick thing to
Okay.
say, and I think that is what I find missing with service providers. The minute you have someone that's walked in and you're about to start with, providing intervention with the child, I feel like the intervention should not be just for the child. When we are making intervention, at the back of our mind, that plan that you're drawing up should also say on X amount of times or hours, you as the parents have to have X number of training, X number of, because only until we do that, before we can have a holistic approach.
So if you were coming to our center, for instance, the first thing that we do, apart from once you've read the contract, you are not starting until you read the contract. And the contract stipulates that the parent and every individual in that organism space must be trained.
Yes.
And the minimum training the parents get is the behavior technician level training. So we have people who they train, and we ask them, who are the significant others? Recently, we had a grandmother, the nanny, the caregiver in the house, mommy, everybody, 5 of them from the family do the training.
Yes.
So we don't, for our center, I don't know about others, but that's what we mean about the parent training.
Yeah.
So everybody has to get trained, okay? So as long as you're in that individual space, we demand, and for us, it's not just about the training. Okay, so as we're collecting data in the center, you're collecting data at home.
At home.
We give you the exact same plan. So if we say today, we're working on sitting down for 2 minutes or 20 seconds, you get the exact same thing to do at home.
Absolutely.
And we call in our parents, we call them to order. We've had people, and our own parents know, the parents that come to us for service, they know. Some of them go, oh, oops, am I in trouble? And I'm like, yes, you are. I say to them, we've had your child for X period of time. These are the milestones. Look at the data, okay? And like you say, see when it starts. Are you satisfied with what progress your child has made? If your response is yes, then please, it's time to end the contract and the relationship. But most times they don't. They want more. So yes, I hear you, and that's what I mean by parent training, getting the right thing. Everybody has to be on board.
I could add to that briefly and say that with ABA, we'll say, whose behavior are you really looking at? We are looking at the behavior of the individual. So the intervention, yes, everyone has to be on board. We're all looking at the behavior of that organism, not the behavior. I don't really, it's not my business if the parent wants to go off their way. As long as they're trained and the right person, the right caregiver is there to...
Is the primary
yes,
person.
Is the primary
doing the
person.
intervention.
Because the focus for me is the organism.
Yeah.
Yes.
But then you can't really get to the organism if you don't take all the stakeholders into consideration.
Into consideration.
So,
I think it's the chicken and the egg thing.
Yes.
I know. A lovely conversation to keep going, but we're going to go on a short break, and when we come back, Doyin will be up.
Where their ideal customers exist, get insight and practical steps from industry players and captains of industries. Hear success stories to help you make
of the central nervous system. It is of a broad spectrum and it hinders the ability of the individual to communicate, interact socially, and behave. Autism is a faceless disorder and is usually not detected until several months after birth. It is known to affect more boys than girls, in which case it tends to be more severe. There are several instances in which a baby who had ordinarily developed appropriately skills such as babbling, looking at companions, smiling, reaching for objects, suddenly begins to drop the skills, especially in areas of eye contact and speech, to retract into a world of their own, where they play alone and most of the time display forms of play, usually repetitive actions that include hopping, flapping their hands, spinning around, lining objects up, flicking switches, running around, and the likes. To date, autism can only be treated, that is, to teach the socially acceptable ways to behave, and there is no cure for autism yet, especially for the certain stereotypical behaviors. Inclusion, a culture of having a mixed collection of people with different orientation coming together to participate in activities together, is advised. At inclusion, every individual is free to join their peers for learning or to work in an environment suitable for them with tools that accommodate their needs in order for them to achieve the same purpose. When appropriate inclusion is practiced, everybody's needs and rights matter. The atypical, whether living with autism or other disorders, is given a sense of belonging, has a voice and access to necessary resources that help them learn and develop in collaboration with their typical peers. The atypical individuals have the opportunity to learn appropriate behavior by immersion, and they tend to excel in the arts and areas with processes within structures. Inclusion presents a mutually beneficial opportunity for all, increasing the creativity, equipping with different ways to achieve a particular goal. It helps others develop empathy, respect, and pastoral care, and fosters the realization of the diverse orientation in people and broadens the scope of plans for the environment. Inclusion is instrumental in changing discriminatory behaviors, in building social relationships, and on the long run, a better community, society, and living. In a nutshell, on the long run, inclusion works for the typical as much, if not more than it does for the atypical. So I ask, why not inclusion?
Because someone will tell you that they don't want their child to sit next to this child that has ASD because they are going to catch the ASD or the Down syndrome or cerebral palsy.
That's where education comes in, enlightenment.
They are set in their ways. Enlighten the parents that is already set in their ways that I don't want my child sitting close to this boy. That's,
but you know what tends to happen, at least from my own experience, is that the children are usually the best advocates.
Absolutely.
Because the children have been informed and they have also experienced it, we find that they tend to go home and tell their parents the appropriate things to do. And for me, I believe that inclusion in the school is just the same as inclusion in the workplace, because it's the same kind of needs that we're trying to address. And it's in getting the same goals, you know, so that at the end of the day, that person, whether they're a child or they're grown, gets to have things that accommodate them, be in an environment where they feel respected and so they thrive. So we find that if a child can do it simply because they were educated, the information was broken down to them early enough, you know, and they also had the opportunity to experience it in bits. How much more with adults? Yes, adults are more set in their ways, but at the same time, what we find is that when you tell someone, this is how it is, they will doubt you until you show it to them. But the moment you show them, then it becomes relatively difficult for them to counter or to continue. You will find the people who will continue to do those things. I mean, it's always going to be that way, but the greater part of the population will, drop their arms, and then they'll come to the table willing to learn, because at the end of the day, everybody wants to be part of a success story. And they already see that this child who came in the other day couldn't make eye contact, couldn't sit down, couldn't do this, is now beginning to do those things. In addition to that, another way that inclusion can be promoted is by identifying whatever skills or anything at all that that particular individual is very good at, and you blow it up. So that the adults, everybody who is going on and on about them being contagious and not wanting to be around them, sees that, okay, so while this child is not sitting down the way I want my child to sit and all of that, they're still able to do certain things that my child can learn. So with everything, when you bring all of those to the table and more, then we tend to have them settling down.
So we know, like,
there are two. Sorry, am I going or you're going?
I just wanted to say something. That what you said is very fantastic, but I feel like it also starts with the work culture or the school culture or all those things.
Oh, definitely.
Yes, because you did say, okay, the children is fantastic from them, but then I feel like even if the work culture or the work environment has not set a policy, so it still comes to, if you don't have those kind of things, enforced and grain. It's just like how you come to the office, you say this are our own motto in this office.
Oh, definitely.
This is what we imbibe. This is our culture. So that, because you find that with adults, we're easy to toe that path when we have those structures in place, when they say, oh, in this place we don't frown at this. This is our own. So it would help as adults, unlike with children, when they are still able to imitate, and it's easier to transfer those things and communicate those things without you putting those rigid structures to help toe the path.
Yes, to quickly add to what you just said, the center is an inclusive center, the creative center, right? And we had gymnastics one day, and the parent walked up to me and said, oh, I know a lot of parents that would like to join, but because you have these other kids here, we cannot. And I said, oh, it's okay. They don't have to. We're inclusive.
The thing about inclusion, okay, sometimes we actually haven't defined inclusion properly. What is inclusion? Is inclusion taking this individual who's got autism or what other developmental needs and just plunking them into my environment and expecting them to behave and act as I am? Or is it that I have a set of scenarios and rules that will truly meet that individual's need? Am I teaching them in the way that they're going to learn? Have I created the right environment for them to thrive in? That really is inclusion. It doesn't mean that at the end of the day, parents are still going to buy in fully to what is being said, okay? And the flip side of the little caveat that you have, some of these individuals, or the children that are on the spectrum, you have the ones that have very strong imitative skills. And sometimes you see it in echolalia, okay, when they're repeating exactly what you see, or their imitation skills are so strong. And so maybe these parents have seen such children, and their concern then is that if I put you in this environment where I have all these others, you're going to pick it up. Different from those that think that by just sending you in here, sort of like, oh, you have malaria, and then I put you to sit beside the person and you get malaria. So you're still going to have those set of people. So I think it's important for us to clearly demarcate and let people realize that it's not okay to exclude these individuals, our population, from these environments, but rather the other way around. And that the parents who genuinely has a concern, we shouldn't also brush them off very easily and say, oh, well, we're inclusive and this is who we are. Yes, it's who we are. But I think it's also an opportunity to educate them.
Educate, yes.
So let's don't miss out on those opportunities to keep educating the environment in its entirety.
Yes. Up next is Zusi. Stay with us.
Increase the reach of your events or business services. To advertise on Plus TV Africa, please call 0906 000 5719 or 0909 040 8408 or send an email to marketing@PlusTvAfrica.com. Plus TV Africa. Big stories live here.
Signs of autism to look out for in your toddler. First, we ask, what is autism? Autism is a neurodevelopmental disorder that is characterized by an impairment in the ability to communicate with others, an impairment in the ability to form social relationships, repetitive and stereotypic behavior patterns. According to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorder, DSM-5, a manual of the American Psychiatric Association, which provides us a list of diagnostic criteria as well as signs to look out for in autism. This list consists of social interaction, communication and language, restrictive, repetitive, and stereotypic behavior patterns. Social interaction, a lack of the ability to follow familiar adults with their gaze or look at what is being pointed at, a lack of enjoyment for activities other children will enjoy, example, birthday party, play dates, lack of showing or pointing at objects of interest, can be described as self-sufficient, that is, happiest when left alone, inability to look parent or caregiver in the eye-to-eye gaze or poor expression, isolate themselves in a group setting, communication and language, delayed receptive language, showing a lack of understanding of what is being said. Example, at 18 months, a child should recognize familiar individuals, objects, or places within the home. Delayed expressive language, not vocalizing words or verbalizing by gestures. Difficulty with pragmatic language. Child's inability to use language as required for different settings. For example, a 4-year-old child should be able to follow the rules of conversation, stay in topic, take turns, ask questions. An unusual intonation, repetitive use of language, impaired make-believe play. A regression or an absolute loss of speech. The child should be able to wave bye-bye at 1 year. Repetitive, stereotypic behavior patterns. An unusual adherence to routines or rituals. Repetitive motor mannerism, example, body rocking, hand flapping, always seeking to touch others. Fascinated by numbers, letter sounds, or any object of choice. Fixated on objects. If your child ticks off some of these criteria, please do not wait. Early intervention makes a whole world of difference. Remember, no two children exhibit the exact same symptoms of autism, tells the statement by Dr. Stephen Shaw. If you have met one individual with autism, you have met one individual with autism. So, your child has been diagnosed with autism. Now, what next?
I always ask that question, what is diagnosis? You know me, you all know me, you know me. You know why I ask that question? I have I don't stop talking about, my daughter is 21. She has autism. She's on the spectrum. Okay? So think about 21 years ago, what diagnosis entailed. And I say it not out of a place of we should throw away everything that's happened, but I come from a perspective of I've seen what happened previously. Like you rightly said, the world has moved on, we're copying things. And so there are a lot of diagnostic tools out there. So it's no longer a question of I give you 10 questions to respond to, and when you've ticked off the 10, you now say, oh, you give somebody a label, they have autism, which is what is still happening. Quite a number of people are doing it. But that is just screening.
Absolutely.
So if you've done the screening and you suspect that this individual may have autism, mark my words, may have autism. What should you do? Refer them to someone that can diagnose properly, not just looking at the DSM-5 like you pointed out, because that is just a criteria.
Yes.
If we don't have people who are trained to use a tool to diagnose, that's a different. But I know there are a couple of us around who are doing that. Okay, so it's important to have that. You can have a clinical diagnosis, no problem. But at the end of the day, let's not give people the label and say they have autism without confirming.
Yeah.
I am doing a research work right now. Okay, we went out of Lagos State and we met this child, a girl who's about 11, 12, thereabouts, you know, adolescent. And when I ran the diagnosis on her, she didn't meet the criteria for autism, ASD. But I kept asking myself what was going on until we got hold of the mother, who then answered the screening questions. And I compared it to what was in the DSM-5. It turned out that this child had childhood disintegrative disorder, which is also a neurodevelopmental disorder.
I think that's something people don't really understand, is that a doctor telling you is different from the specialist telling you, right? So like when you go for your MOT and maybe, you know, the GP has found something, you know, found a lump, I suspect it might be, you know, cancer, or found something I suspect is this. You then are referred to the specialist in that area to check.
Yeah.
So it's a similar thing.
Get the lump out, do a biopsy,
we find that.
I think for me, the next question should be, who then does the diagnosis?
Before.
Because I think that a lot of it, just like as you've said, some people have the screening tool and then you use the screening tool to screen out and you say this. So who does the diagnosis? Because sometimes I just go to one person, or even, you know, the doctors cannot just be the person to do a diagnosis.
They do not do diagnostics.
No, they shouldn't.
They shouldn't. But sometimes that is what you get.
They shouldn't.
Someone walks into you and says,
they use what they use is a scale, like the DSM, the criteria scale.
What we're saying
so
is
that's what
it's
I'm
not
saying.
a
And so
diagnosis.
I feel like we need to speak on that, because let people be knowledgeable about who does the diagnosis. Because you said you need a diagnosis for you to be able to get intervention. So who does the diagnosis?
So that's what what I say. Remember what I said. I'm not saying we should jettison the DSM criteria, because to be trained to do a diagnosis costs a lot of money. It is not readily available in the country. I remember one of the hospitals I worked with in the course of my research, when they found out I was ADOS trained and all of that, they wanted me to train them. But I said I had to go back to where I did the training to be sure that I had the approval to train the trainer.
Yes.
So that's what, so it's expensive, and I understand that. What I'm saying, or the emphasis is, we're not saying don't tell people that, don't do the assessments and everything that you're doing. But to have a definitive differential diagnosis requires a bit more than administering 10 questions, 40
Not a
questions,
skill.
some
Not
checklist, a skill.
Not a skill.
It's really important. If you have a suspicion, state it there, I suspect this. It's fine.
Aside
Whatever
the fact
you've
that
done.
Yes.
it's the diagnostic tools are expensive.
Very.
And you need to be trained. I remember as of 2 years ago, I couldn't get any tool with my level of certification. I couldn't. But last year I could get certain because you need to be trained. And even at that, I'm even still requesting for more training because you get a lot of reports that says otherwise. But the most important thing, aside the suspicion, a diagnostic report, I see it as opening the doorway to the right intervention for your child.
I like that.
So
Opening
it
the doorway
opened the doorway for the right
for your
intervention.
child.
Why do I say so? I will bring this home to myself. I suspected a lot of things with my son. I don't know what was going on in Nigeria then. I really do not know. They were just, oh, your child is fine. Oh, it's fine. But I knew there was something. I started doing what I could do. Thankfully, yes, it's made a lot of progress. But as soon as he got a proper assessment and a proper report, I could then put in the right intervention that for the very first time, even at school, they're saying, oh, it's a lot calmer. Oh, this is going on. So that is what a diagnostic report would help you do.
We thank you for your attention while the program lasted. We hoped our conversations resonated with you and that in some small way encourage you to contribute to your immediate environment. Little drops of water, they say, make a mighty ocean. Remember that there's nothing more weakening about a disability than the way people treat you over it. The advocacy continues on our social media platforms on Facebook, PlusTvAfrica, #TheAdvocateNG, and on Twitter and Instagram at PlusTvAfrica. #TheAdvocateNG. To catch up with previous broadcasts, go to plustvafrica.com/theadvocateNG. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Plus TV Africa and Plus TV Africa Lifestyle. Join us next week, same time, on this station. Let's keep advocating for a better society. See you next time.
See you.
I left Nigeria back as far as 2012, and it was a very funny story. As you can see from my social media pages, my best food is amala. So I worked after work. I'm a medical doctor, full-time doctor. After work, I went to this famous place in Oshogbo where they have amala just next to my hospital. So while I was there, I sat down with the food, and then I saw this newspaper advert saying doctors needed urgently in Saudi Arabia. So I abandoned my plate of amala. The rewards were just amazing, and I couldn't believe my eyes. You know, free accommodation, free flights. I was earning, you know, I was going to earn like times 20, you know, of what I earned at the time, in dollars as well. So I packed my bags, went home, packed my bags off to Lagos. I was at the Keja for the interview. Like immediately? Immediately, I left the Amala, went home, packed my bags, and off I went to Lagos. The next day I went for the interview, did the interview. There were loads and loads of people there. Did the interview and got picked, and I was on my way to Saudi Arabia. So from Nigeria, I worked in Saudi Arabia for 2 years, and then I walked around the Middle East, Dubai, Oman, Bahrain. And from there, while I was working, I was writing my exams to work in the UK and the Republic of Ireland. So from there, I got a lecturing position in the UK, and then I was able to pass my exams within that time. So I got my licenses to be able to practice in Europe. So at the moment, I can practice in Europe, I can practice in New Zealand, I can practice in the Middle East, and of course in Nigeria as well. So my journey hasn't been straightforward. My journey has been from Nigeria, scattered around the Middle East and then Europe. The first culture shock I faced was I landed on a Thursday and obviously Friday, but it didn't click that Friday was a day to be respected in the Middle East, in the Muslim society. So I got up, was looking for food. I got out of my house, and after walking for like 5 minutes, it still didn't click that I was the only one in the environment, okay? So after walking about, say, 500 meters, I suddenly saw a car just drove in front of me and blocked me, and then I saw all these guys in beards just came, and of course I didn't. So the guy just came and said, "What are you doing out here? It's Friday. You're supposed to be praying." I'm like, I paused, and then he says, "Okay, are you a Muslim or a Christian?" Yeah, are you a Muslim or a Christian? I swear I didn't know whether to say Muslim or Christian because I didn't know what was going to happen. If you say Christian and they start flogging you, if you say Muslim, why are you not in the mosque? So I paused, and the guy said, "Bring out your Ikama." I showed him my Ikama, which is like a resident permit. That shows your religion, so it shows it shows I'm a Christian. And then he said, "Where are you coming from?" I said, "I just got into Saudi yesterday. I don't know what's going on." Then he said, "Well, today's Friday, Jumat. You have to be praying. If you're not praying, you respect it. Stay in your house between this period." So I said, "Okay." He said, "Everywhere is closed. You can't even get food." So I said, "I'm sorry. I will walk back right now." And then another one that was amazing, even though I was a doctor, I couldn't speak to female patients. So if a man comes in with a woman and the woman is the one with the problem, you cannot talk face to face to her. You cannot ask her. You have to ask the husband, say, "Okay, why have you brought this woman here?" And then the husband would. So my first experience, I spoke to this woman who had a breast lump, and I was talking. The husband was just looking at me. So when I finished, he was answering me, and when I finished, the guy just lost it. "How can you be talking to my wife?" I was like, I'm not toasting your wife, guy. You know, calm down. So the medical director had to give me an education, you know, yeah. So we were able to just placate the guy at that time. So that was one culture shock for me as well. Okay. I've traveled a lot of countries. I've seen 50 different countries now. I would say that in Europe, okay, so some very interesting ones. When I got to Europe, I was in my house just sitting on my own, and friends said, "Come on, there's this birthday party happening, let's go and eat." I said, "Birthday party? Oh yeah, let's go now, where's the venue?" So I went to the venue, we ate, we ordered, ate everything, finished. Birthday party. At the end of the day, the celebrant came and said, "This is the bill." And in my head, I'm thinking, bill for what? I should pay that you invite. I was in my house. I was in my house. You invited me. I came to eat. Now I have to pay the bill. So that was one. The second one was, of course, driving. In Nigeria, you're on the left side, but in the UK, you're on the right side. So that was another culture shock for me in Europe. Okay. It's important to state that I always talk about the way to live legally within the legal bounds without violating any international laws, which is opposed to what people do, most people do. And if you notice very well, people live, you know, it's upward movement. You're living from poorer countries to rich countries. And interestingly, it's not as if the people who leave their countries illegally, generally speaking now, are not the poorest of the poorest when you put the standard of their country into context. They're not the poorest of the poorest. But because they're looking for better opportunities, they're looking for a place where they will get, you know, larger finances, a better standard of living, education, good access to health. That's why they're leaving. So they don't care how they do it. So long as the promises, you know, they've been given good promises, then they just take that pathway. I always use my social media handles on Instagram, on YouTube, Waka Waka Doctor, to tell people of the legal ways. And the reason why people most times don't want to follow this pathway is because I would say it's inherent laziness, because you have to do the work. You know, this illegal pathway, they're possibly going to say, pay this amount of money, we will just move you across the border. But they don't consider the consequences that come with it. This way that I preach involves a lot of, you know, work. You have to do a lot of work. So it means that you have to do research, you have to make applications, you have to pay little amount of fees, and then get the end result. So if you're not open to working, I give tips, I point you towards the right direction, but if you're not open to working, then it becomes a difficult task for you. So the easiest way is to keep educating ourselves. We keep educating these people and passing the information across. And I mean, this is one thing I'm doing now, and it's one thing I've been doing for the last 18 months, using Instagram, Twitter, YouTube to pass the information across. If someone comes to you to say, okay, I'm going to take you to Europe, you're a cake baker, I'm going to get you scholarship, there are documents you want to see. There are documents you want to see. You have your original passport. Have you submitted a statement of motivation or a letter of intent? Do you have a visa? Have you submitted documents to help you get an original visa? Do you have a work permit? Have you seen an original work permit? Have you called your employers over there to confirm that I have a real job and I'm coming to resume? So that again brings me to my first point, that people are mentally lazy. They don't want to do the work. Because when someone gives you documents and say, oh, this is your document, we're going abroad, you should say, give it to me. Let me confirm if it's real. Let me confirm if it's original. If it's a work permit, I'm going to call my employers to see if this job is real. If it's a school admission, I'm going to ring up the school to find out if it's real. I told you behind the cameras, I said, people have this mentality that, you know, things work outside just the way it works in this country. It's wrong. If you pick up the phone and call an admissions office, they will talk to you. If you pick up the phone and call an employer, they will talk to you. You're just looking for information. And if the information is real, they definitely get it. So, like I said, the first way to help with spread of information, help curb this is spread of information, educating people. And that's what I've been doing for the last 18 months using my social media platforms. Nothing good comes extremely easy, okay? You have to be patient. I tweet sometimes, I say that, I say, when you travel abroad, your life changes. You know, your skin becomes fresh, your smile is different, okay? There's peace of mind, you know, things come to you easily. You can actually actualize your dreams. You can live out your dreams right in front of you because there's a system that supports that. So my advice is, when you go abroad, be patient, keep working hard, don't stop, don't relax, you know, have a vision, write it down, allow your eyes see that vision, you know, consume it and continue to work towards it. It's simply as basic as that. That would be my advice. Save, and always call home, because one of the downsides to going abroad is that it can be boring sometimes. And that's why you should call friends. Don't cut people off. Call friends. You know, always call home if you miss home. Like, I'm home now because I missed Amala. I missed all those things, so I came home. So yeah, that's my advice. Keep working. Keep your head down. Of course, keep your connections back home so that you can always come back to them. This is a huge subject. It's a huge subject, and it's not something I can share in 1-2 minutes. So I'm going to say that the first thing you want to do is open an Instagram account if you don't have an Instagram account, and look for me, Waka Waka Doctor, because I give tips. Now, there are job boards across Europe, across Asia. You cannot streamline your choices and say that, oh, I just want to be in Canada. I just want to go to the US. I just want to go to the UK. There are 195 different countries in the world. So you have to say that I'm open to any one of them. And most of these countries have job boards, okay? Websites, different websites where you can submit your applications. You go through rigorous interviews. You submit documents. If you then succeed, they are able to process your work permits and employ you. Now, some people will say, oh, I've tried the UK, it didn't work out, so they give up. But there are different countries in the world. There's Turkey, there's Lithuania, there's Kazakhstan. I know teachers that I've spoken to, in fact, 6, 7 of them in the last 4, 5 months who have left Nigeria to Kazakhstan, right? They teach English. They earn at least $1,800 in Kazakhstan, which is much more than what they will earn in Nigeria. So there are 195 countries. I post them, I mean, almost every day on my Instagram channel. So you can watch and see some of these job boards and apply for jobs. Some basic truths and facts is not every doctor can leave the country. So even if doctors are leaving, more doctors would graduate and you still have doctors around. But doctors are leaving in their large numbers every day. So the future of medicine in Nigeria is very bleak, because you have the extremely intelligent doctors leaving, going abroad, because the system abroad is extremely encouraging. The system abroad gives you opportunities to become greater than what you can ever think or imagine. People keep writing their exams, people keep going for interviews because the system allows it. So the advice straight up I'll give to the Nigerian government is, first and foremost, create a platform that encourages us as doctors. Facilities, give us things we can, it's not as if, you know, things we only see in the books, things we can see and work with. Pay us money. I worked in Osun State. My salary in 2011 was 90,000 naira. I was doing 2 jobs and I couldn't earn 120,000 naira, 2 jobs. When I went to Saudi Arabia, salary was $5,000. Look at the discrepancy, it's too huge. And they were owing us 6 months. You owe someone 6 months. How can, I was seeing 200 patients in a day. 200 patients. How, I mean, the first 10 patients I see would get the best out of me. The other ones, the truth, it's just the truth. The other ones would be people, that's it. It doesn't work that way. Create a good culture, a good environment for doctors to work. Pay them properly. You know, give them, you know, standard remuneration that they can compare with their friends and colleagues abroad and say, okay, yes, we you know, it's commensurate to the work we do. Nigerian government really has to improve. The future of Nigerian doctors, sadly enough, is abroad, and countries are asking for them. Like the PLAB exam is an incredibly easy exam to just write and pass. So people are writing it and moving, you know. So if Nigeria cannot improve these parts, payments, facilities, you know, then it's a poor tale. I would end on this note to say that this is a popular theme that I've always passed across, to say that travel is not necessary of money, but of courage. And the reason is because it takes courage to decide to leave a place you've been for many years and go to a place that's brand new. You're going to be leaving your friends, you're going to be leaving your family, you're going to be leaving your job, you're going to be in search of ways to make money, search of better career. So it's often very difficult. They always talk about academics because academics seems to be the easiest path. But even if it's true career, like I've said earlier, you can go search for these job boards that will give you employment. Again, experience counts. I'll give you an example. Places like Australia are in need of people with huge experiences in different fields. Whether you're a cameraman, you're a technician, you're a chef, if you have 5-10 years, electrician, 5-10 years of experience, and you apply for jobs in Australia, they'll take you. Estonia, Lithuania, these are places that are in need of vocational, you can do vocational studies. If you're not a skilled worker, so to say, these are places that are in need of you. So age is not a factor. So even if you're 50 and you have 15 years of experience to back this, they're looking for you.
My father has a lot of sides, and you hear about the fights. You don't hear about family that much and what that meant to him.
What's your dad's name?
Muhammad Ali.
No one, not even some members of his family, knew of the existence of these audio tapes until recently.
You're now 11 years old.
They thread the narrative of the boxing champion's life in Claire Lewis's documentary. Ali's daughter, Hannah, offered the tapes to Lewis.
Say, I love my daddy.
I love my daddy. I love my poo-poo head daddy.
Okay.
My father was always conscious about history. And, I think that's one of the reasons why he made this series of audio tape cassette recordings.
Say, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee.
The film shows the whole world in love with him. Testimonials of friends and adversaries paint the Olympian and three-time boxing champion Cassius Clay, later Muslim convert Muhammad Ali, as a sensitive, poignant, and courageous man. Because he refused to serve in the Vietnam War, he was stripped of his championship title, and his boxing license was revoked. His close friend, former football player Jim Brown, remembers.
He had a lot of courage. The risk he had to take, and then to be isolated, to have his crown taken away, not be able to make a living, that was difficult.
But he stuck to his convictions, and in 1974, at the age of 32, Ali made a comeback.
When George Foreman meets me, he'll pay his debt. I can drown a drink of water and kill a dead tree. Wait till you see Muhammad Ali.
He defeated formidable George Foreman and recaptured his title.
I get into the ring with the guy, I bluffed him, I done everything. Beat him up basically for about 5 or 6 rounds. I thought it was easy. Then about the 6th round, he whispered in my ear after I'd hit him in the side, "That all you got, George?" And that was about all I had.
I Am Ali does not say much about his broken marriages, but it highlights his bond with his children.
I was the Concorde of boxing. I was at a high altitude than the rest, moving fast.
As Ali has aged, we hear him begin to slur his words, a sign of developing Parkinson's disease. He finally retired in the late 1970s, and in the mid-80s he was diagnosed with Parkinson's. But to the world and his children, he remains an icon of power and grace.
If anyone wonder why me, Muhammad Ali, is making these tapes, is because history is so beautiful.
Penelope Pulu, VOA News, Washington. Spirituals, gospels, and blues informed Alvin Ailey's dance movements. Ailey was raised in poverty by a single mother in segregated Texas. His upbringing informed his choreography, a blend of modern dance and ballet, speaking to the Black experience. Using archival footage, filmmaker Jamila Wignot explores the influences behind Ailey's creative genius in her documentary, Ailey.
I really wanted to come at it in the way that Mr. Ailey came at it, and that was about let's acknowledge that there is pain and struggle in this story, but let's also look at what are the essential things that keep us going, and where are the strengths, and what is true to the everyday experiences of being in this particular community.
Identity was a strong message. Being able to say through the choreography, I am, was a very, very important theme that ran through the dances.
Wignott explains how Elvin Ailey's dance creation, entitled Revelations, expressed the communal joy Black people felt through dancing the night away and worshiping at church the morning after.
He wanted for every kind of audience to be able to come to a theater and experience a human story in the bodies of these people. And I think that's when Mr. Ailey talks about his work being universal.
His dance, entitled Cry, was dedicated to his mother and to motherhood at large.
The Black women who would encourage you, who would be there always, who were so supportive, I mean, that you could not fail.
What he's really trying to access and draw upon are these kind of women who have been the strength of a community, and certainly in his own life, being raised by a single mother for the vast majority of his youth.
Wignott hopes the documentary offers insight into Ailey's inner psyche as a prolific choreographer of 72 dance works, as an aloof individual, and as a gay African-American who did not allow himself into permanent relationships.
He has this kind of heroic quality to him, as well as these real human struggles.
Penelope Pulu, VOA News, Washington.
What we do not understand, we will stigmatize.
What you can see is the remaining of the tanker that exploded.
He suffered equally confessed.
A 500 naira they collect am. If you no talk, dem go beat you. Na 2,500 they pay.
businesses in Africa can be very challenging. In Nigeria, it is particularly intimidating, and successful builders have learned how to navigate a hostile environment to unlock opportunities. But one major challenge businesses face is how to filter through the noise and identify where their ideal customers exist. Get insight and practical steps from industry players and captains of industries. Hear success stories to help you make informed decisions as you scale your business in Nigeria. Watch Business Insights at this time on PlusTvAfrica.
Good evening, I am Destiny Momo and this is the news update. President Muhammadu Buhari has once again issued fresh directives to security agencies to rescue all those in captivity across the country and advance the acquisition of intelligence. The National Security Advisor Babagana Monguno told State House correspondents after the National Security Council meeting that the president is not happy with the prevailing security situation. According to him, the last straw was the recent attack on the Abuja-Kaduna train, leading to the killings of some passengers and kidnapping of scores. And former President Olusegun Obasanjo has disclosed that amid growing insecurity in the country, the creation of state police will be a better option than community policing. Obasanjo made this disclosure when the leadership of the National Association of Ex-Local Government Chairmen in Nigeria paid him a courtesy visit in Abeokuta on Wednesday. Obasanjo, who commended the initiative behind the formation of the body, said that the developments clearly showed that some local government chairmen in the country were better than even the top elected leaders. A community leader in Niger State has accused the Nigerian Air Force of killing 6 children and bombing houses in Kurebe, Shiroro local government area of Niger State. According to the spokesperson of the Coalition of Shiroro Association, Koza Salis Sabo, the strikes occurred on April 13. However, the Nigerian Air Force is yet to react to the allegation. And the First Lady Aisha Buhari has invited presidential aspirants to an iftar dinner at the presidential villa on Saturday. The invitation, which was extended to all presidential hopefuls across political parties, is expected to have the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, and 17 other aspirants from the main opposition party. The People's Democratic Party, PDP, including Rivers State Governor Nyesom Wike, former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, and others in the ruling All Progressive Congress, APC, grace the occasion. The invitation card for the event advises those participating not to come along with their mobile devices, stating that their invitation cards will serve as their entry pass. And an early morning fire that engulfed part of the Makurdi office of the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, at the Old GRA area has now been put out. According to the director of Benue State Fire Service, Donald Ikiaza, his firemen rushed to the scene and put out the fire before it could spread to other parts of the bank. He said the fire started from the fuel dome of the bank. And as political appointees and others begin to resign from their current status to contest the 2023 general elections, all eyes are on how those offices will be run in a short term. A legal practitioner, Liberal Soshomara, and a political analyst, Olufemi Lawson, are advocating that those in charge of checks and balances adopt structures to ensure there are no gaps. Our political correspondent, Jacinta Abuku, takes a look at the issues.
There have been contentious positions as regards the constitutionality of Section 84(12) of the Electoral Act 2022. In fact, President Muhammadu Buhari protested the constitutionality of the controversial provision of the newly assented electoral law. Others have argued that the section of the Constitution is able to disenfranchise people from vying for electoral offices. A legal practitioner, Liberal Soshoma, countered this.
It does not disenfranchise anybody because the provision of the Constitution actually limits participation for civil servants. That if you are in the employment of the government of the federation or of the state, that you cannot contest for an election except you resign 1 month before the election. And the Court of Appeal had held that political appointees are not employed in the government of the federation or of the state for the purpose of that section. And so once that, what that means is that if you're a political appointee, you can remain in office till even contest for election, whilst in that other office.
A political analyst, Olufemi Lawson, shared the same view. He insisted that the section of the law would limit the excesses of the political class.
I would want to say that morally, it is, I don't think we even need a law to this extent to tell you that, come, you have an ambition to pursue in Jigawa State, then why are you sitting in Abuja as a minister? If truly you are a very serious candidate.
One of those vying for the highest seat in government is the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo. There are questions about how his latest ambition could cause a divided attention in carrying out his current duties as the nation's second in command.
The VP's attention certainly would be divided, just the same way a sitting president who is vying for a re-election's attention will be divided. So, and the question is, what we should do is to ensure that there is proper monitoring, not just a divided attention, to ensure that the job and the functions of that office is properly carried out.
The truth is that pursuing a political ambition is a natural distraction. Politicians will continue to aspire for other higher positions. Politicians will continue to even demand for what they do not deserve. But it is the duty of you and I to say, no, you don't deserve it. So those who have had competent ministers as deputies should hand over to them, brief them. Those who have not had should use the next few days to get them carried along so that the duties of state will not suffer.
INEC has given political parties between April 4 and June 3, 2022 to conduct primaries. This means that public office holders seeking to be elected must resign before June 3rd, when INEC expects that all issues on party primaries must have been resolved. Meanwhile, the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, ought to have issued a circular stating a deadline on when they should resign. But he has not, as President Buhari has not given directives to do so. Nigerians are watching to see how this pans out. Jacinta Obiuku, PlusTV News. There have been contention.
And Lagosians are unhappy that no work has commenced on the Echo Bridge weeks after a fire incident burnt goods worth several millions of naira and caused serious damage, forcing motorists to use the alternative routes. And that is on our street views. Take a listen.
have a government in this country. You have leaders. They don't care for us. They don't care for us. They're just doing anything. The bridge affects us so much. Let the government open the bridge.
They should fix it now so that we won't have this stress when driving. We are praying that someone should please do it for us.
As you can see, it's affecting everybody. So they should come visit everywhere in abroad now. 2 hours they've done it. So Nigeria government should move fast.
It's affecting us every day. Like what we are passing through here every day. Sometimes we spend more than 1 hour before we can go through the traffic. It's affecting us. We are begging government to just help us fix it.
Fix it quick now. Now the bridge all of us they use. If you know bridge, no us. Make it feed us, make all of us seafood to feed for our family.
We spend 2-3 hours. Like on Monday we spend 5 hours. 5 hours for hold up. It disturbs every day. Not only one, it disturbs every day. It's very, very critical. It's disturbing every day. Please let them know, let them help out know what they will do there. I beg. It's affecting us very well. In our buses, they keep complaining every day. You understand? One woman delivered a child last week inside the traffic last week.
And I'm moving on to other parts of Africa. A number of refugees and asylum seekers from different nationalities have been holding a sit-in front of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees for almost a week, demanding evacuation from Tunisia. And after they held a sit-in in the city of Zarzis for 3 months, dozens of African refugees moved their sit-in front of the United Nations headquarters in the capital, Tunis. The protesters, most of whom were rescued while trying to cross to Europe by sea, gathered there their families and children with only milk and bread to eat. They said their protests were pushed by worsening social and economic conditions as well as limited aid. The United Nations Refugee Agency has, however, called for dialogue with the protesters. Cameroon has signed an agreement on April the 12th with Russia for military cooperation as part of the continuation of military ties between the two countries for several years, with their emphasis recently on the revision of the military deal signed in 2015. In the 13-page document, the two countries agreed to exchange opinions and information on defense policies and international security, development of relations in the areas of joint training, medicine, topography, or military hydrography. They also agreed to exchange experiences and interaction in peace support operations under the aegis of the United Nations. And from news outside Africa, President Vladimir Putin has ordered the Russian military to cancel plans to storm the Azovstal plant in the Ukrainian port city of Mariupol, but rather opted for a blockade instead. Putin said his decision not to storm the Azovstal plant was motivated by the desire to safeguard the lives of Russian soldiers. Russia sent tens of thousands of troops into Ukraine on February 24 in what it called a special operation to degrade its southern neighbor's military capabilities and root out people it called dangerous nationalists. Ukrainian forces have mounted stiff resistance, and the West has imposed sweeping sanctions on Russia in an effort to force it to withdraw its forces. And on business news, African Development Bank, AFDB, says it is working on a $1 billion emergency facility to help African countries tackle rising prices of fertilizers by providing support to the government and farmers. Fertilizer price has increased by over 180% in the last 1 year. A bag of urea increased from 6,000 to 17,000 naira, posing threats to the Nigerian's food production. This set to engage with member countries on policies with sustainable infrastructural efficiencies in Africa's agricultural system. And I'm moving on to entertainment news. ASAP Rocky has finally got his freedom back. The ASAP mob member has been released from prison after paying his $550K bail following his arrest at Lax over an alleged shooting that occurred in November last year. The 33-year-old MC hip-hop star was arrested by the Los Angeles Police Department upon his arrival from Barbados with Rihanna, who is currently pregnant with their first child. The LAPD made the arrest with help from Immigration and Customs Enforcement's Homeland Security investigations. Rocky reportedly shot at an alleged victim 3 to 4 times near Vista Del Mar and Selmer Avenue following an argument. The victim sustained a minor injury from the incident and later sought medical treatment. And on sports news, Manchester United have confirmed the appointment of Erik ten Hag as their new first-team manager. The 52-year-old Dutchman had been in charge of Ajax since 2017 and will continue in the role till the end of the current season. And Erik ten Hag has been appointed from the end of this season until June 2025 with the option to extend for a further year. Manchester United said that the appointment is subject to work visa requirements. And that's the news update. For more stories, please follow us on our Facebook, Twitter and Instagram page, and do subscribe to our YouTube channel at PlusTvAfrica and PlusTvAfrica Lifestyle. I am Destiny Mama. Many thanks for watching.